My name is Graham Foster, and I've been married to Celeste for 12 years. 12 years of watching her climb corporate ladders while I ran my small landscaping business from our garage. 12 years of hearing how my lack of ambition was somehow contagious, like I was spreading mediocrity through the suburban air of our main neighborhood. The first crack in my perfect marriage appeared on a Tuesday night in March. I was down in my man cave, sorting through receipts for tax season, when I found something that didn't belong in our household expenses. A hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown, dated 3 weeks ago. The signature read C. Foster in Celeste's distinctive handwriting. 3 weeks ago, she'd told me she was working late on quarterly reports. She'd come home at midnight, exhausted, complaining about her demanding boss, Brent Ashford, and how the corporate world was grinding her down. I'd made her tea and rubbed her shoulders while she vented about office politics. Now I stared at this receipt for a room she'd never mentioned, on a night she'd claimed to be buried in spreadsheets. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, where Celeste was already asleep, her phone charging on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a text notification. Tomorrow's meeting moved to 3 p.m. Same place. B. B for Brent. I went back downstairs and poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey. My military training had taught me patience, observation, and strategic thinking. Before jumping to conclusions, I needed intelligence, real evidence, not just suspicious receipts and late-night texts. The next morning, Celeste was unusually cheerful over coffee. She wore her best suit, the navy one that cost more than my truck payment, and kept checking her reflection in the toaster.
"How was the performance review?" I asked. "Exhausting," she sighed, not quite meeting my eyes. "Brent is so demanding. He really puts us through our paces." "I bet he does." She looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just that corporate life sounds intense." Celeste relaxed and launched into a detailed story about budget projections and market analysis. She was a good liar. I'd give her that. Detailed, consistent, delivered with just the right amount of weariness. I nodded and made sympathetic noises while planning my next move. Over the following weeks, Pete's surveillance painted a clear picture. Celeste and Brent had been meeting twice a week for 3 months. Always the same hotel, always the same room. Pete had photos of them entering together, leaving together, and one particularly damning shot of Brent's hand on her lower back as they walked through the lobby. But I wanted more than just evidence of the affair. I wanted to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. That opportunity came on a Thursday night when Celeste thought I was asleep. She was in the living room, talking quietly on her phone with her best friend Kendra. "He has no idea," Celeste was saying. "Graham's so focused on his little landscaping business, he doesn't pay attention to anything." "Are you sure about this whole thing with Brent?" Kendra's voice was tinny through the phone speaker. "Brent's promised me the regional director position when it opens up. His wife doesn't understand him. And Graham? Well, Graham's holding my career back. He's content with mediocrity." "But what if someone finds out?" "Who's going to find out? Graham? Please."
You talking about Brent Ashford? That snake's been coming in here for years, bragging about his conquests. Your wife's not the first, Graham, and she won't be the last. What do you mean? Last week, she was in here with that friend of hers, Kendra. 3 drinks in, she was talking about how she'd be Mrs. Ashford within the year. Said she had Brent wrapped around her finger. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, but a kind of clarity. Celeste had made her choice. Now I was going to make mine. "Pete, I need you to document everything. Photos, times, locations. Build me a timeline." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to let my wife have exactly what she's been asking for." That weekend, Celeste's parents called. They wanted to take us to dinner at the country club to discuss some concerns they had about our marriage. "What kind of concerns?" I asked Celeste. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I might have mentioned that you're not very supportive of my career goals." "Supportive how?" "You know, you're content with your little business, and sometimes I feel like that holds me back from reaching my potential." I almost laughed. "So you told your parents I'm holding your career back?" "Not exactly. I just said we have different levels of ambition." "Different levels of ambition?" I repeated the phrase. Tasting it. Interesting way to put it. Graham, don't make this harder than it needs to be. They just want to understand why I seem so unhappy lately. Are you unhappy? For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Then it was gone. I'm fine. We're fine. It's just dinner with my parents. I agreed to the dinner, but I had my own plans for the evening. The country club dinner was set for the following Saturday. Celeste spent the week in a state of nervous energy, working late every night, coming home with stories about project deadlines and client meetings. Pete's surveillance confirmed she was still meeting Brent at their usual hotel, sometimes for hours. I used that week to make preparations. First, I called Veronica Ashford. Getting her number required some creativity, but Pete's investigative skills proved useful. I posed as a vendor trying to reach Brent about a catering proposal for a corporate event. Mrs. Ashford, this is Graham Foster. I run Foster Landscaping. I'm calling about a potential business opportunity that involves your husband. I'm sorry, I don't handle Brent's business affairs. Actually, this is more of a personal matter. I think we should meet for coffee. I have some information you might find interesting about your husband's work relationships. There was a long pause. What kind of information? The kind that explains why he's been working so many late nights lately. Another pause. When and where? We met at a small cafe across town on Thursday afternoon. Veronica Ashford was an elegant woman in her mid-40s with careful makeup and expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the tired lines around her eyes. You said you had information about my husband, she said without preamble. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Photos and documentation covering the last 3 months. I think you'll find them educational. She opened the envelope and went very still. The photos showed Brent and Celeste entering and leaving the hotel, holding hands in the lobby, sharing intimate conversations over drinks. Who is she? Veronica's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. My wife, Celeste Foster. She works in your husband's department. Veronica studied the photos methodically. How long has this been going on? 3 months that I can prove, possibly longer. Why are you showing me this? Because tomorrow night, my wife's parents are taking us to dinner at your country club. They want to discuss why she's been so unhappy in our marriage. Apparently, I'm holding her career back. Veronica's laugh was bitter. Holding her career back. That's rich. I thought you might appreciate the irony. She closed the envelope. What do you want from me? Nothing. Just thought you should know what kind of career advancement your husband has been providing. You want revenge. I want the truth to come out. There's a difference. Veronica was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. You know, I've suspected for years, the late meetings, the business trips, the way he talks about his female employees, but I never had proof. Now you do. What's your plan? Tomorrow night, Celeste's parents will be at your country club. They're concerned about their daughter's happiness. I think they deserve to understand exactly why she's been so focused on her career lately. Veronica smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. You want me to attend this dinner. I want you to be available if the conversation turns to workplace dynamics and professional development. I see. She tucked the envelope into her purse. You know, I've been looking for a reason to have a conversation with Brent's colleagues about his management style. It's important that employees feel comfortable in their work environment. Absolutely. A hostile workplace can be so damaging to morale. We shook hands, and I knew I had an ally. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp spring air that made everything seem possible. Celeste had spent 2 hours getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a black dress that was conservative enough for her parents but stylish enough to make a statement. You clean up nice, I told her as we walked to the car. Thank you. She was nervous, checking her reflection in every reflective surface we passed. Relax, it's just dinner with your parents. I know, I just want everything to go smoothly. The country club was exactly what you'd expect. Mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of hushed atmosphere that suggested serious money and serious conversations. Celeste's parents were already seated at our reserved table, looking like they'd stepped out of a Brooks Brothers catalog. Richard and Margaret Whitman had never quite approved of their daughter marrying a landscaper, but they'd been polite about it. Tonight, however, they seemed particularly formal. Graham, Richard stood to shake my hand. Good to see you. Richard, Margaret. I kissed Margaret's cheek. Thank you for arranging this. We made small talk while reviewing the menu. Celeste was unusually quiet, picking at her salad and checking her phone periodically. So, Richard said after the waiter took our entree orders, Celeste tells us you two have been having some challenges. Challenges? Margaret leaned forward. She's mentioned that you have different perspectives on career development and professional growth. I glanced at Celeste, who was studying her wine glass intently. Different perspectives?
That's one way to put it. We're concerned, Richard continued, because Celeste seems unhappy lately, stressed about work, distant at family gatherings. She says she feels like she can't pursue her full potential. Her full potential? I repeated. That's interesting phrasing. Celeste finally looked up. Graham, please. Please what? Your parents are concerned about your happiness. I think they deserve to understand what's been making you so fulfilled at work lately. Margaret frowned. Fulfilled? Oh yes, Celeste has been putting in tremendous hours with her boss, Brent Ashford, really going above and beyond in her performance reviews. Performance reviews? Richard asked. That's what she calls them. Very intensive, personal sessions. Sometimes they last for hours. Celeste was staring at me with growing alarm. Graham, what are you doing? I'm helping your parents understand your career development process. That's when I saw Veronica Ashford approaching our table. She was dressed elegantly in navy blue, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in this environment. Excuse me, she said with a warm smile. I couldn't help but overhear you discussing career development. Are you talking about corporate advancement strategies? Richard looked puzzled but polite. We were discussing our daughter's professional growth, yes? How wonderful! I'm Veronica Ashford. My husband Brent is actually a department head at Morrison Industries. Perhaps you know him? Celeste had gone very pale. Mrs. Ashford, I didn't expect to see you here. Oh, you must be one of Brent's employees. How lovely to meet you. Veronica's smile was perfectly pleasant and absolutely lethal. I hope you don't mind if I join you for a moment.
I love talking about professional development, especially in my husband's department. Margaret gestured to an empty chair. Please sit down. We were just discussing how dedicated our daughter has been to her career lately. Dedicated? That's exactly the word I'd use. Veronica settled into the chair with practiced grace. Brent often tells me about his employees who show exceptional commitment to advancement, the ones who are willing to go above and beyond traditional work hours. Richard nodded approvingly. That sounds like Celeste. She's been working very late recently. Oh, the late-night sessions are so important, Veronica agreed. Brent believes in very hands-on management, personal attention, one-on-one coaching, really getting to know his team members on an individual level. Celeste was gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Mrs. Ashford, I don't think... Please, call me Veronica. We're practically family, considering how much time you spend with my husband. She turned back to Richard and Margaret. You should be so proud. Your daughter has really distinguished herself in terms of after-hours commitment. Margaret looked pleased but slightly confused. After-hours commitment? Oh yes, Brent has mentioned how impressed he is with employees who understand that career advancement sometimes requires flexible scheduling, hotel meetings, weekend conferences, that sort of thing. The word hotel hung in the air like a smoke alarm. Richard's expression was shifting from pleasant interest to something more guarded. Hotel meetings? For privacy, you understand. Sometimes the most important professional development happens away from the office environment. More intimate settings where employees can really demonstrate their dedication to moving up in the company. Margaret was beginning to look uncomfortable. Intimate settings? Veronica's smile never wavered. I probably shouldn't say more. These professional relationships can be so delicate, but I will say that Brent has been coming home very satisfied with the quality of his mentoring lately. Celeste stood up abruptly. I need to use the restroom. Of course, dear, Veronica said sweetly. Take your time. After Celeste left, the table fell silent. Richard was staring at his plate, and Margaret was looking back and forth between Veronica and me with growing understanding. Mrs. Ashford, Richard said carefully, when you say intimate settings? Oh, I think I've said too much already. Veronica glanced at me. Perhaps Graham could provide more context about his wife's professional development activities. I pulled out my phone and showed them one of Pete's photos. Celeste and Brent entering the Marriott together, his hand on her back, both of them laughing at some private joke. Margaret gasped. Richard went very still. This was taken last Tuesday, I said quietly, during one of those performance reviews. Richard studied the photo, then looked at me. How long? 3 months that I can prove. Margaret was staring at the photo with the expression of someone watching a car accident. She told us you were holding her back. In a way, I suppose I was. I was holding her back from fully committing to her career advancement strategy. Veronica stood gracefully. Well, this has been lovely, but I should let you finish your family dinner. Richard, Margaret, it was wonderful meeting you.
I hope we'll see each other again soon. She shook hands with both of them, then leaned close to me. Thank you for the enlightening conversation about workplace dynamics. After she left, we sat in silence. Celeste returned from the restroom, took one look at our faces, and knew everything had changed. Mom? Dad? Richard couldn't look at her. Margaret's eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Celeste, we need to talk. About what? About your career development strategies, I said. She sank into her chair, and I watched 12 years of marriage crumble in real time. The drive home from the country club was conducted in complete silence. Celeste stared out the passenger window while I navigated the familiar streets of our neighborhood. Her parents had left immediately after our conversation, with Richard promising to call me later and Margaret unable to even look at her daughter. When we pulled into our driveway, Celeste finally spoke. How long have you known? Long enough. Are you going to file for divorce? I turned off the engine and looked at her. In the dim light from our porch, she looked smaller somehow, like the confidence she'd been wearing for months had deflated. That depends. On what? On whether you're planning to continue your professional development with Brent. She flinched. Graham, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. You decided I wasn't ambitious enough, so you found someone who could advance your career in ways I couldn't. It's not that simple, isn't it? You told your parents I was holding you back. You told Kendra you were planning to become Mrs. Ashford. You've been meeting your boss at hotels twice a week for 3 months. But not before filing a complaint with HR and providing them with documentation of Brent's pattern of harassment. What kind of documentation? She showed me her phone. She'd recorded not just that morning's confrontation, but several previous conversations with Brent, including ones where he'd made explicit promises about career advancement in exchange for personal favors. When did you start recording him? Last week, after you showed me that file. I realized I needed to protect myself. Smart thinking. She looked at me with something like surprise. You're not angry? About you covering your tracks with Brent? No. About the affair? That's a different conversation. We stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the detritus of her former career, and I realized we were having our first honest moment in months. I'm sorry, she said. Not just about Brent, but about everything. About telling my parents you were holding me back. About making you the villain while I was the one betraying our marriage. Why did you do it? She was quiet for a long time, staring at the box of office supplies and personal photos. Because I was scared, she finally said. Scared that this was all there was. Scared that I'd wake up in 20 years and realize I'd never taken any chances, never pushed for anything better. And you thought Brent was better? I thought he represented possibilities, options, a different kind of life. What kind of life? The kind where people took me seriously, where I had real power, real influence, where I wasn't just the landscaper's wife who worked in HR. That stung, but I could hear the honesty in it. Is that how you see yourself, the landscaper's wife? Sometimes. And I hated myself for it, because you're a good man and you work hard and you deserve better than someone who resents you for being content. I'm not content, Celeste. I'm grateful. There's a difference. What do you mean?
I mean, I appreciate what we have instead of always focusing on what we don't have. I like our life. I like our house, our neighborhood, our friends. I like the work I do and the money I make doing it. That doesn't mean I don't want more sometimes, but I don't let wanting more make me miserable with what I already have. She nodded slowly. I never learned how to do that. Maybe that's something we can work on. Do you really want to try? After everything I've done? I looked at this woman I'd married 12 years ago, standing in our kitchen with her career in ruins and her illusions shattered, asking me for another chance. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to find out. That evening, we had dinner together for the first time in months. Not the careful, polite meals we'd been sharing since she moved back, but an actual conversation about our marriage, our mistakes, and what we might be able to build from the wreckage. What happens with Brent? I asked. HR is investigating. With the evidence I provided, plus testimony from his previous victims, he'll probably be fired. And you're okay with that? I'm the one who reported him. Of course I'm okay with it. Even though it means your affair becomes public knowledge? She hesitated. The affair is already public knowledge. At least this way, people will understand that I was being manipulated by someone in a position of power. Were you? Being manipulated? Yes and no. He manipulated the situation, but I made the choice to participate. What about his other victims? I asked. 2 of them are considering joining Veronica's lawsuit. The third one got a new job in Boston and wants to put the whole thing behind her. Simone leans across the bar. You know what the best part is? Brent's been coming in here every night since he got fired, drinking alone and complaining about how unfair life is. Last night, he tried to blame your wife for ruining his marriage. What did you tell him? I told him that actions have consequences, and maybe he should have thought about his wife before he started chasing every skirt in his office. I appreciated Simone's directness, but I was more interested in focusing on my own situation than gloating over Brent's downfall. Celeste had been job hunting for 3 weeks without much success. The Morrison Industries scandal had made local business news, and while the articles didn't name the women involved, our small business community was tight-knit enough that most people could fill in the blanks. I'm getting a reputation, Celeste told me over dinner. Potential employers are polite during interviews, but I can tell they've heard the rumors. What kind of reputation? The kind where people wonder if I'll conduct myself professionally or if I'll cause problems with workplace dynamics. That's probably fair, given recent events. She looked hurt, then nodded. You're right, I created this situation. So what are you going to do about it? I'm thinking about starting over somewhere else, maybe Portland or Boston, where people don't know the story. Running away? Relocating strategically. I considered this. What about us? What about rebuilding our marriage? I was hoping you'd come with me. Leave my business? By being consistent and reliable and honest until people forget about your past and start focusing on your present. That could take years. Yes, it could. And you think I should just accept that? I think you should accept responsibility for the choices that created this situation. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. What if I can't do that? She asked. What if I'm not strong enough to rebuild here? Then maybe we're not strong enough to rebuild together. It was a harsh thing to say, but it was honest. I was tired of being asked to accommodate Celeste's choices while she avoided their consequences. That night, she slept in the guest room again, and I lay awake wondering if we were trying to save something that was already beyond repair. The next morning, I got a call from Richard Whitman, Celeste's father. Graham, I was hoping we could meet for lunch. There are some things I'd like to discuss. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, away from the country club where our last conversation had taken place. How are you holding up? Richard asked after we'd ordered. I'm managing. And Celeste? She's struggling. The job market is challenging given recent events. Richard nodded. Margaret and I have been talking. We feel partially responsible for what happened. How so? We put a lot of pressure on Celeste to achieve, to succeed, to always be moving up in the world. Maybe we made her feel like what she had with you wasn't enough. I appreciated his honesty, but I wasn't ready to let Celeste off the hook entirely. She made her own choices, I said. Yes, she did.
I promise to earn your trust through my actions, not just my words. My vows were simpler. I promise to see you as you are, not as I wish you were. I promise to communicate my needs instead of expecting you to guess them. I promise to build a future with you based on who we've become, not who we used to be. It wasn't the fairy tale ending that some people might have expected, but it was honest, and it was ours. As we danced to our new song, we'd chosen something different from our original wedding, Celeste looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking that this is better than what we had before." "How so?" "Before, we were playing roles, the devoted husband, the ambitious wife. Now we're just being ourselves. And you're okay with yourself?" "I'm learning to be. It's harder than playing a role, but it's more honest. Honest is good. Honest is everything." We kept dancing, surrounded by the people who'd supported us through the worst year of our marriage, celebrating not what we'd recovered, but what we'd built new. Outside, it was starting to snow, the first storm of the season covering our small Maine town in fresh white. Inside, we were warm and grateful and cautiously optimistic about the future we were creating together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and after